do them. He wasn't particularly good at them. He was kind of like, hey, this is who I am. You want to know who I am? Watch the game. That's who I am.
I start to read materials that you're very quiet and you don't enjoy talking to newspaper people.
Well, you know, there's different kind of newspaper people. There's people that try to push you. You know, there's people try to get things out of you. Things don't even pertain to basketball, and then the type of people I like to stay away from.
He didn't want people talking about his family. He didn't want his mother to have to deal with that, or his siblings to have to deal with that.
You got to remember where Larry came from. You know, Larry was raised in a 2 or 3 room house on a railroad track. Their family probably lived on $50 a week. He was raised tough.
Larry Joe Bird grew up in southern Indiana, in the twin towns of French Lick and West Baden. The Valley, as locals call it, was a tough working-class area. Tiny and remote, it was one of the poorest places in the state.
I didn't know that people made millions of dollars. I didn't know that everybody had a family car. I was in my own cocoon. I was in a small town with the people I knew, and I thought I'd live there for the rest of my life.
Arriving Pearl Harbor Day 1956, Larry was the 4th of 6 kids born to Georgia and Joe Bird. Early on, he and his older brothers earned a reputation around the valley.
We were always considered troublemakers. We're either fighting amongst ourselves or there was always one of us fighting somebody. Larry was always one that kind of instigated things, you know.
If I get my brother in a fight with somebody his age, I was happy as hell because I like to see him get beat up, and that's just the way it was. If I got in a scrape with some kid and my brothers didn't come to my side, they knew that when he got home, my dad was going to whip him.
Larry and my dad were the best of friends. They done everything together. When my dad would go out to my grandma's house, Larry would always go with him. They'd go fishing, do a lot of things together.
But Joe Bird also had a darker side, stemming from a traumatic tour of duty in Korea.
Larry remembers waking up in the middle of the night hearing his father's blood-curdling screams from the nightmares he had had from the war. What happened to his father in the war affected his entire life. He was never able to quite get rid of whatever those demons were.
A talented craftsman, Joe Bird struggled to hold steady jobs. And even when he was working, his demons would, on occasion, drive him to the bottle.
There were times when Joe went out with the guys and had a few beers and the wages didn't come home that night. And that didn't happen every day. It happened once in a while, but when money is as tight as it was for the Birds, once in a while was a major problem for their family.
My mom sometimes worked late and sometimes she had 2 jobs, but that's the way it was. I worked at school during my lunch hours, worked at the local grocery store, put up hay in the summer. I mean, if you wanted money, you had to get it on your own.
To young Larry, actions spoke louder than words.
He was very quiet, kind of hung to himself a little bit.
I saw Larry take an F in an English class because he had to get up in front of his peers and give a speech. So I won't do it. But he just could not get up in front of his friends and talk. He was that shy.
Of course, next thing you know, when he knew it was time for all of us together at the gymnasium, there he'd be. The minute he'd get a basketball in his hand, things were totally different.
Basketball was just, it came to me, seemed like easy. I didn't have the quickness, I didn't have jumping ability. I just thought the game out.
By his senior year at Springs Valley High, Larry Bird had sprouted into a star. But Bird was from the Valley, hardly a hotbed of talent in the big-time world of Indiana hoops.
The first thing they say, well, they don't play nobody down there. He's from French Lick. They don't play nobody.
I think that put a chip on his shoulder, always having to prove who he was and how good he was.
He was good enough for Indiana University's Bobby Knight to come calling late his senior year. And folks in the Valley couldn't have been prouder. Their local hero was heading 60 miles north to play ball for one of the best college teams in the land.
Once I got to IU, it didn't take long to realize that I was out of my cocoon. I had over 30-some thousand students. That I didn't have the funds. First week and a half, I thought, man, this ain't gonna work.
He left after 24 days.
Let my mother down. She didn't talk to me for 2 months, but it didn't matter what other people said. To this day, I don't care.
Back in French Lick, Bird took to working for the city, hauling trash and painting park benches. Meanwhile, by that winter, his father's demons had taken him to an even darker place.
By this point, Joe and Georgia were divorced, and he was behind in his payments to the family. The police came by, and of course they all knew him. So Joe said, hey, I need a few hours to get my affairs together before you take me away. So he called Georgia and he said, you guys will be better off without me, and I'm gonna take my life. And he put the phone down and he killed himself. He shot himself.
When Dad passed, you know, it hurt Larry. I mean, that was his best friend. It's gone now. But Larry didn't show it a lot.
He just didn't say much. You know, he just kind of held it within. I never heard him speak out about it at all.
I was mad when I heard about it, and I was madder after the funeral because I thought he sort of cut out on us during a tough time. But you know, he went through a lot in his life. He did what he had to do.
If Bill Hodges hadn't been as persistent as he had been, Larry Bird might never have existed in any of our minds. I believe that with all my heart. I really do.
It was Bill Hodges, a young coach from Indiana State University, who convinced Bird to give college hoops another shot. So with a promise to his mom to graduate, Bird headed to Terre Haute and ISU, a school that never so much had been to the NCAA tournament.
Once I started playing, it's the same old thing. You know, he's at a small school and he ain't playing against anybody, which is fine. Still dominated.
Wherever Hoosiers gather, they no longer talk of whether Indiana has a new state bird. Now his claim to fame is just the way he plays the game. Indiana has a new state bird. It's not the Cardinal now. Hey Larry, take a bow. Indiana has a new state bird.
By the time he had led tiny ISU as a senior to a 33-0 record and a spot in the '79 title game, Larry Bird had become, alongside Magic Johnson, the talk of college basketball. Just a year after sharing the court on Team USA, they were back together. And the day before the big game, Magic couldn't wait to greet his old playmate.
Indiana State was on practicing, and we were waiting in the tunnel. We got there early. I wanted to definitely say hello to Larry, you know. When they came through, it was like nobody would say nothing. I wanted to go toward him, like his guys, like made sure that he didn't say nothing. And then they kind of started snickering, like, Michigan State, you in trouble. We're going to kill you guys tomorrow.
I probably did snub him. I don't remember it, but I'm sure I did. I didn't want any, you know, like I call it love fest, hugging and slapping high fives with opponent. You're there for a reason. You're there to win a game.
That just said it's on now.
It is Indiana State against Michigan State. I'm Bryant Gumbel, and the fans here are going bananas.
I mean, let's face it, if Larry Bird were black and came from Chicago, it wouldn't have been as big a deal. They were polar opposites. One black, one white, one outgoing, one shy. That was the charm of the attraction.
The Bird against Magic. All of the superlatives have been used, and believe me, all of them have been warranted.
Heading into the tournament, Magic was the bigger star. But by tip-off, it was Bird, having hardly missed a shot in the semifinal, who had become the focus of fans, and more importantly, of Michigan State.
We actually had two men on Larry everywhere he went.
There he is, Dick. Look at they have him sandwiched in completely.
I'm surprised they didn't play a box-on-one, you know, 4 guys on Larry and 1 on the other 4, because they didn't have a lot of talent. You know, if you stop Larry, you pretty much stop them.
Look at the pressure around him. 2-3 net, and he's short.
I didn't play well at all. Biggest game of my life, I didn't play well.
I think our length and our size, our jumping ability was able to bother him.
I didn't shoot well, missed I think 3 free throws.
Larry Bird has had a cold shooting night.
I battled him, but I didn't have it.
Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. Magic, not only were you a leader on offense, I thought you did a great job on Larry Bird in the zone denying the ball.
Yes, Coach gave us a good game plan to go against Larry Bird, and all we had to do was go out and do it. That's what we done.
And congratulations, Super Bowl game.
It was over, you know. That was my 4 years. I was done. No, it still hurts. And when you win 33 in a row and you walk into a game, you know, you never know what to expect, but I expect to win. We didn't win. Toughest loss I ever took.
I knew it was going to haunt him forever because we were going to see each other a lot.
The National Basketball Association, in its 33rd season, is troubled by diminishing crowds and declining television ratings, signs that fan interest may be waning.
If college basketball was flourishing at the end of the 1970s, the pro game was crumbling. After the golden era of Bill Russell and Jerry West in the 1960s, a merger with the ABA in 1976 had led not only to new teams, but a new temperament.
It was a new league with new times, with renegades, with individuals.
There was an argument made, plausibly I think, that it was too black a league for the United States of America in the late 1970s.
You think about the Knickerbockers at the time. The running joke was it was the Knickerbockers. You know, that's what it was. It was the N-word.
It's turning off a lot of white customers that are coming to the game, you know.
Why?
I think there's a conflict between the white and the black, and I don't enjoy going to the basketball and seeing all black players.
I mean, I think when they said too black, they meant not just in terms of color, but in terms of style. Let me get mine, and the hell with yours.
Basketball for us was about the best moves. You wanted to be that big player that everybody talked about. You wanted to be the one. You didn't think about winning championships or team play.
And those were just the issues on the court.
The NBA had this image of an all-black league with a bunch of guys who did drugs. The teams were losing money, and they had no sponsors. And that's pretty much a death knell right there.
It's a known fact that you need your white superstars. You just need more white ball players on the team for the white fans to identify with.
And in the newest member of the Boston Celtics, that's exactly what the league appeared to be getting.
There's hope he can help solve professional basketball's difficulties, which some say are compounded by a question of black and white.
The Great White Hope. What does that mean?
Well, you know, it's very hard to say because there's a lot of great white players around, and I just hope that I can just fit in as well as some of them that has fit in.
He ran away from that designation. He made it very clear, almost from day one, that he was not the Great White Hope.
You know, the great players are the black players, and they're the best.
Such deference meant little to black Celtics like Curtis Rowe, Sidney Wicks, and Cedric Maxwell, who looked at Bird and saw not the Great White Hope, but another case of Great White hype.
He didn't impress me no more than any white guy I've ever seen play before. I think that you would say that most black players at the time were racist, in the sense that we did not think that you could find a white guy who could play better than any black guy.
When I walk in the first day of camp, them guys were on the floor stretching, and here comes the white savior, here comes this, here comes that. I sort of enjoyed it because I knew I was going to battle them all day. But Curtis and Sidney didn't last long. They didn't even make it through the first practice, and they were cut. So then it was just Cedric.
I'm thinking, oh, he's slow, he can't get off a shot. He's not that strong. This is going to be a layup. Bam, knocks down the jump shot. maybe that was luck. Gets the ball again. Bam, knocks down another jump shot. Now I'm thinking like, okay, hey, you know what? I'm gonna D this guy up. I'm gonna show him his life. 20 feet away. Bam. 25 feet away. Bam. My mind just goes, damn, this white guy can play.
It was a good thing, too. The storied Celtics might have been the winningest team in NBA history, but they were fresh off their worst season in 30 years. And in Bird, they had a player who was not only supremely talented, but tough enough to take on any challenge.
I always played like everybody in the world was against me. I thought everybody was against me. I used to think up things to get me rattled before a game.
He knew how to fight. I know that from off the floor. One night, somebody was giving one of his buddies a hard time, and Larry went over and, said, hey, this is my friend, and this guy was a pretty good sized guy. By golly, they go out back, and the guy turns and says something to Larry. Larry hit this guy, and I caught him. Hit him so hard, I go, whoa. He was from the old school, and that's how he played.
Larry Bird plays it to the hilt, baby.
I played the game hard. Played rough.
There was no frills about him. He came in, he threw elbows. There was nothing smooth about Larry. New Englanders like that. They're hardworking people. They like that's how people view them, and that's what Larry was.
Larry Bird follows his own shot.
They also like winners. And when Bird led the Celtics to the NBA championship in just his second season, he was finally one of those too. Boston loved Larry Bird. It just wasn't so clear at first how much Bird loved the city back.
There's only one place I'd rather be, French Lick. Thank you.
Man, Larry was almost agoraphobic in his treatment of anything outside his hometown.
He wanted to be the Wizard of Oz. He wanted to intimidate people and keep them at bay. The further we are away from each other, the more I like it.
I had a nice little house. I had my little yard. I want to go from there to practice back. If we had a game coming up, I want to go there to the game and back home. It was all basketball. My whole life was basketball.
If he was just sitting there with just me, you were looking around mumbling, trying to find things that we had in common that we could talk about. Now we started talking about basketball, started talking about players. It was, that was great. U.S. history? No.
We forced passes, we made errors down the stretch.
Daily events? No.
I made the shot, and from then on we was up by 2, and they had to get back in the game, which they did.
Politics? No.
Try to not do anything I can't do, or do no more than what I can do. I just go out and try to do my basic game.
He proudly dubbed himself the Hick from French Lick, and he looked every bit the part. But those who played him for simple did so at their own peril.
One of the great ways, I think, of winding up with no money in your pocket is to think Larry Bird is dumb. Syntax is not intelligence. Unlettered is not stupid.
He's got a great sense of humor. He just didn't show that to people. That didn't mean he didn't have it.
He did, however, allow the public one small indulgence.
You could come out on Saturday and watch him mow his lawn.
Huge crowds started to stop. Larry Bird's cutting grass in front of his house. He's mowing his lawn in the springtime.
Larry is about doing things himself. And I think it's one of the things that made him so beloved in Boston.
But as Bird navigated through his new world, he still had one eye fixed on a familiar foe in a faraway land.